Authority Alchemy.
Authority Alchemy.
The show for positioning yourself as the number one authority in your industry.
Quickly turn your prospects into clients and clients into raving fans.
Here are your hosts,
Brian Horn and Jack Mize.
Well, here we are again. It is that time. I am Brian Mize, and here with
Jack Horn.
What do you call that?
Something's wrong there.
Pattern interrupt? What do you call that?
Sure. I think a bad joke.
Maybe so. You know who we are because the fancy man on the recording just told you who we are. Jack Mize and Brian Horn. And today's episode of Authority Alchemy, we are going to be talking about adding authority to your presentations. We've actually had people ask about this. One, because, Brian, how many webinars do you think you've done over your career being that educator, advocate, authority?
Oh, hundreds.
Hundreds.
For a while back in the webinar heydays, I was doing them weekly almost. We just do them constantly.
Yeah, so hundreds of webinars. We've spoken at probably dozens, if not hundreds, of events of all different types. And you've actually spoken in how many different countries?
Five different countries.
5 different countries. And one thing that we've seen are some really good presentations. To me, watching a speaker, whether it's a speaker live on stage or listening to a great webinar, can be like listening to a symphony to me. I mean, it's really, you can get mesmerized by it and listen to great content. Oftentimes, it's not what people think make a great presentation. It's the subtleties. So as many great presentations we've probably seen multiples of that in really bad presentations.
Yeah, I've seen some that are just horrible. We were just talking a little bit ago, and there's one case where I was in Australia speaking at an event. That's when I'd mentioned this before. I sold about $250,000 worth of stuff at it. It was an incredible audience of a couple few hundred people, all with money ready to spend. And there was one speaker there who just did terrible. When the person was going through it, I just knew it was going to be bad. I mean, it was just everything was wrong with it. And then at the end, sold zero. Flew across the world from the United States over to Australia to speak at this thing and sold not one single $497 product. Couldn't find one person in the room of hundreds of people with money ready to spend. Didn't do one thing. Just messed up on so many of these key things we're going to talk about today.
It almost had to be on purpose.
It was unbelievable. That was probably one of the worst presentations I've ever seen a person do. There was not one thing right about it. The offer was bad and confusing. The information shared didn't demonstrate that this person really knew anything about the topic outside of very general stuff, that she had any kind of concern for the audience and trying to really help them. It was just bad.
And those are the subtle points that people think when they sit down. And unfortunately, it's one of the things that a lot of people fear are doing presentations, even webinars. I've seen people just really sweating it out because, to do their first webinar,
right? Which
is probably compounded by the technical aspects of a webinar over just going on stage and speaking. But what I find is people focus on the things that probably are going to hurt them more than help them. Overdoing things, adding way too much to their presentation, and not focusing on really the things that are going to make the biggest difference. And that's why we're calling this adding authority to your presentation. Now, we won't have time to talk to you about putting together a complete presentation. Honestly, some of those would be different depending on what your subject matter is, right, what your industry is. But if you have a core of a presentation, you have a message, we want to talk about some things that you can do to add authority to that. And oftentimes that means removing things from your presentation, but basically the core of it, what they need to start with the foundation is what?
Right, being the educator and advocate. That's where everything starts.
That is, put yourself in that mindset, in that frame of mind, that my job is to educate and to be an advocate for the success of the people that are taking their time out of their lives, away from their family, to listen to this presentation, whether it's at a live event or whether it's a webinar, is make sure that you going in there as that educator and advocate. And you'll be surprised. And we've had a lot of people that we've coached on this, that by changing that mindset, the stress just melts right off their shoulders when they think I'm going in there to educate and be an advocate, rather than I've got to go in there and demonstrate some, expertise, and I need to make them think that I am just the top person in my field. And it changes everything, and it really does change the outcome of oftentimes of how these presentations go.
The webinar, the presentation, when we do it live, one of the first things we do in it is lay the foundation for the rest of the webinar, the rest of the presentation, that we're here to teach you X, X, and X. So our job is to teach you these things, and by the end of the next 60 minutes, you're going to learn this stuff. And then at the end, we follow up with that and say, did we do our job? Do we teach you these things? And the response is always wonderful.
Yeah. One thing people hate is to go into a webinar under the pretense of they're going to learn something, and it's just that used car salesman. I hate to say that about used car salesmen. I think we have some car salesman clients, but let's say the stereotype of the used car salesman, that it's nothing but buy this from the word go. But when you educate, it's always going to be the best foundation that we found for a presentation, especially for adding authority. People will look at you as the expert, and you don't have to call yourself the expert. That's the foundation generally always. The next thing that we see a lot of people make a mistake with is...
put too much stuff in there.
Yeah, it really is. There's a great saying, was it? Brevity is the soul of wit. I see people that try to put so much information, and they try to make their presentation, especially if they only have a 45-minute or 60-minute. We've seen a lot of this lately.
Oh, yeah.
Where people have a 45 or 60-minute presentation, especially if they're new to giving presentations, whether it's webinar or on stage, they are always worried, do I have enough stuff? Am I going to be able to fill the time?
Right.
And almost always what happens is the inverse. They have way too much, and it ends up them trying to pace and tread water with stuff in the beginning, and then the last 10 minutes is them, let me hurry up and get through this. Let me get through this because I got to get all this stuff in. So short and sweet is a great way to add authority. The more time that you have to get specific points across at a comfortable pace, it's going to be that much more powerful than if you're rushing through trying to get to all these points that you think, make sure that I'm clear on that you think are important to the people. You're not going to be able to give a complete guide A to Z in a 45-minute to 90-minute presentation. So don't even feel that you have to. Keep it short and sweet.
For each slide that you have or each point you want to make, you want to ask yourself, is this going to move my audience to the place I want them to move by the end of it? You making a sale or them signing up for your newsletter, whatever you want. Each one of those things to have that point. If you're going into a lot of detail on a whole bunch of different things, that doesn't help. That's the stuff you need to cut out.
Either a presentation point or slide. Make sure there's a purpose. Look at it and say, is there a purpose to me going over this information?
Oh, yeah. We have to do the same thing. Ours, we sit down and have cutout sessions. We just had one, last night or yesterday, we need to cut a bunch of stuff out. We just go through and knock stuff. Does this really help accomplish what we want to accomplish? Does this help educate our audience on things we want to educate them on? Are we acting as an advocate here? Does it move them to the place we want them to move on? If the answer is no to those, we just knock it out.
There's an old saying in the copywriting business that I wrote a long sales letter because I didn't have time to write a short sales letter. Right? Because it really does take a long time to get those points out. And the same thing can be a presentation. I have a really long presentation. I can tell you right now, it's easier for me to give a 2-day presentation than if somebody came and said, we need you to do a 30-minute presentation. Yeah. You can call me today and I can be there to do 2 days tomorrow. But if you want me to do a 30-minute presentation, well, give me a week or so to get that together.
I did my 2-day event in Vegas a few months ago. I really have to prepare it all. I just sat down and just talked. I know the subject backwards and forwards. I know I can just riff on it, really go into great detail. But like you said, man, when you have that little 30 minutes, like when we were on the cruise, I had to completely write something from scratch and prepare it because I don't talk for 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah. No, it's very tough for me to do anything in 30 minutes. Very few things. In 2 days, I can plug in and go 30 minutes. That's a chore. So think about that. You may think that short and sweet, oh, good, this will be easy. I only have to do 30 minutes. You're going to find out that that's going to be one of the harder things for you to accomplish. But I will tell you one of the easiest ways to get there is by focusing on this next point to add to authority, and that is just like we've talked about micro specialization, right? Make your presentation a micro subject presentation. It doesn't have to be an all-inclusive of what you do, but it can be one particular benefit, one problem, one solution that is part of what you do. And if you have the luxury of knowing the audience, who the audience is, if they're a specific group, then you can pick that problem solution that applies most to them. Take your micro specialization, then even get more granular for your presentation. People, for especially a 30 to 90 minute presentation, it's very tough to come across as authority if you're doing a general survey.
Right. We talked about that in episode 7, where we talked about how to get more speaking engagements. The example of internet marketer. If you just say, okay, I'm going to talk about internet marketing at this event, you're going to get no speaking gigs at all. And if you go and if you are talking that general, you're doing nobody service at all. But if you talk about something very specific, just about how to set up and run your very first Facebook ad campaign using your autoplay videos that are coming out, that's something fresh, very specific, and people walk away with a benefit.
Yeah,
it's getting down to that micro level.
Yeah, exactly. So think about that, narrow it down, And I will almost promise you that your presentation is going to have more information than you thought it would be. It's going to take you longer to get through it than you thought it was going to. So be very, very careful about thinking, well, I need to add more. This isn't going to fill up enough time, because believe me, it will. Because especially if you take time to go through what you're talking about, you're going to have questions and you're going to have people that are engaged. And I will tell you, engaged people eat up time. You're going to be saying, look, I know you're all interested in this, but I don't have time to talk to you. Let me get through this. No, you want to engage. Another way to add authority is avoid the common mistake of thinking it has to be perfect, trying to script out your presentation. How many times have you seen, especially at a live event, where the person is trying so hard to remember a script of what their presentation is that it completely dilutes their message, right? I would much rather, and I think we can agree, passion over perfection.
Always, yeah. That's the most entertaining people, the ones who are the most passionate about it. You look at like Gary Vaynerchuk, however you say his name. I'm just as bad with that as I am with niche and niche, but however you say his name, he's all passion.
He is. And he's polarizing. He can offend some folks, too, with his language.
Oh, yeah. Just about every event I've gone to, even with a James Malinchak, he's all over the place. He's a wild man on stage. I remember I was speaking at Glazer Kennedy Info Summit years ago, and he was going on earlier the day before I went. And I was sitting in the back of the room, he was getting ready, and he was in the corner doing almost like Rocky does in the corner, where he was sitting there just going up and down the knees and then started doing little punching thing in the corner, getting pumped to go up there. And he went up there and just tore it up and killed it because he had that passion. And that's what people like to see over just information. People, we like to be entertained. We're simple people. Yeah. I'm a simple guy. I want to be entertained. If somebody goes up there and they give good information, but it's like listening to a professor in college talk, it's snooze fest. That's why I quit college, because I couldn't handle the being so boring. But man, to get somebody up there and entertain and tell some jokes and put some other interesting images up there and moves it along, it's great.
Yeah, and I think passion, there's a lot of different things that can be incorporated into passion.
Sure.
Being genuine, being yourself. When you're passionate and people feel that passion, especially when you're passionate about your subject matter, when that passion flows through as the educator and advocate, when they can tell that you're not only passionate about the subject matter, but you're passionate about them succeeding with the information that you have, that will overcome the lack of perfection. I can tell you that I've done presentations where I had nothing prepared. Here, Jack, we had a fallout. Can you come up and talk about this area of what you do for 90 minutes? And you bet. And I'll go up there and they'll say, where's your slide deck? And I said, you mean my slide? you only told me about this, 8 hours ago. There is no slide deck. Here's my slide that has my name on it and maybe a topic. And I will talk. Now, will that talk be perfect? Will I need to stop and think about my next point? Absolutely. And don't be afraid of silence, especially in live events. Now, I think we need to make this clear. Silence on webinars probably isn't good.
Yeah, people think they're cut out or something. There's a technical problem.
Yeah, is my sound working? Yeah. So webinars, typically you're not going to shoot from the hip on. You have a planned presentation. But when you're speaking live, don't fear silence. Silence can actually be one of the most powerful pieces of a live presentation if they see that you're gathering your thoughts. People can't see you gathering your thoughts on a webinar.
Right.
People can see you thinking in a live event. So don't fear silence. You see a lot of people on stage that they have to be talking constantly, whether it's ums and ahs or this and that, because they just don't want any silence. Ums and ahs. I'm the king of ums and ahs. Ums, ahs, you don't think about it till you go back and listen to yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're from Texas, so what do we hear? What's the Texas silence killer? Know what I mean? Right? You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Be careful about those kind of things. But passion is going to come through all the time. It's one of the pieces that I want to kind of talk about that I know I don't like. I'm not comfortable with. I know that, you're not comfortable. It's that whole about me, who I am.
I call it the highlight reel slide. One at the beginning, about the second or third slide in every presentation where the person talks about all their great accomplishments. And it's a highlight reel. That's all it is. And it's so anybody can have one of those.
It is. And so what are the commons we see? One, especially in the internet marketing or the make money, that we see somebody standing in front of a mansion with their Lamborghini.
Right. That,
boy, look at how swell my life is. And it's all about them. And those, I just, I can't take those. Then you have the people that, here's me and my family on vacation. Here's what I do. And those are good, but go back to the whole short and sweet. If you can make your about you part of your presentation, really a disguised version of about them.
Right.
When you're talking about you, but in a context that they see how what you're saying benefits them, that's the most powerful way to do that, whether you're speaking live or whether you are doing a presentation on a webinar. If you can very purposely make your about you really about the audience, that's going to be the most powerful. I really am uncomfortable with the whole about me, but it's necessary, especially if it's an audience that's not familiar with you, because they need to know why they should listen to you. And you have to be able to make the point of why they should listen to you, while at the same time not looking like you're beating your chest about, right. I'm the smartest, I'm the best, look at me. And if you can also throw a little bit of self-deprecation in there, it doesn't hurt, right?
Oh, I always try to. Last one I did I was in Atlanta a couple weeks ago speaking, and I did, not the typical highlight. I think I had literally 3 or 4 points on there. The real basic things about it, how many people we've helped and how I've helped people. That's kind of how I put it back about them. I did one that was 2 truths and a lie. You might have heard us play this game on some of our other interviews. 3 of these things I'm putting about myself are true. One of them is a complete lie, and had everybody in the audience chose one that had them all stand up. If they chose it, then sit back down. The next one, everybody stand up. So it got them involved, and they had a good time with it. And all of them, the one that was they're all self-deprecating ones. There's like, I've wrestled sharks on the bottom of the ocean, but if a little mouse runs out of a closet, I'm screaming and running into the other room, which is completely true. I'm scared to death of mice, and sharks don't bother me. But so I put little things like that in there, where they're funny things. Like I played spades with Blair from The Facts of Life. So I've got all these like little funny things that are interesting, but are very
But that's a great way to insert your authority, but disguised as a game, because it's not you bragging about yourself. It's a necessity to make the game work.
Right.
Right? So here's 2 truths. If you made $2 million in an afternoon, instead of saying, well, you should listen to me because I made $2 million in an afternoon, but if you wrap that in a game and say, here's 2 truths. One is, once in an afternoon, I made $2 million with what I do.
And I made $2 million in an afternoon, but I still wear the same pair of underwear for 2 years. Or something like that. You put something in where it makes it funny and interesting.
Yeah, and so that's a way for you to sprinkle your authority in without it being a resume or a chest-pounding session, is if you could sprinkle it in and disguise it as something else, they get to get the same effect of, oh, this is certainly someone that's accomplished and up to something, but you weren't up there doing, okay, now listen to what I've done.
Right. Particularly with men, you're in competition. So once we see a guy goes up there and says, I made all this money, immediately you put a wall to go, that's BS. He's not done that, or you'll find something else wrong with it. But if you sprinkle in something that makes you self-deprecating about yourself, it makes you a likable person. And they just go, oh, okay, that's cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So a way to get past that barrier.
Don't fear making a little fun of yourself. Yeah. Now, here's the big one.
Yeah, this one always kills me.
It is, and you recognize it right out of the chute. We call it the death by PowerPoint presentation. Yes. We're not even talking about the content. We're talking about someone that, what did you call them?
So just on PowerPoint, an hour before they made this presentation, they want to use every one of the animations and transition effects. I was watching one. They had 6 or 7 bullet points, which was a lot anyway, but they were all at one point still spinning. She was having to wait to start reading them because she clicked through them so fast, like boom, 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 and all these things were still just spinning there.
Boy, that's bad when your PowerPoint goes rampant, and you can't lasso in your PowerPoint. I don't know, it has a mind of its own.
Oh yeah, all explosions, and it's just like
everything. You lose the drama, the dramatic effect when everything is an explosion or a kapow or the spinning in and spinning out.
It's like a Nick Cage 90s movie, just slow running away from the explosions.
Yeah, it's really bad. So there can be some very important and dramatic effects that you can use with PowerPoint and Keynote. They do some really cool things.
Keynote's awesome.
But understand the value of less is more. I got over using a lot of those, especially if I had to make them myself, to where if I'm doing training videos or anything like that, it's pretty much a white background and the points.
Yeah, same here.
You can do it more on webinars because people may miss what you're saying, or if you misspeak, they see the bullet points, and keep those bullet points to 2 or 3 or 4 at most on a page. But when you're speaking live, they're there to see you live. Think about if you went to see a band in concert and they went out and sat in a chair with some sheet music in front of them and, played the notes. You don't necessarily want to just stand in a presentation and read PowerPoints to a live audience. And it goes back to the passion over perfection. Have a conversation with them rather than sit there and read your PowerPoint slides. We see that all the time. That is really death by PowerPoint, and that's a very painful death by PowerPoint. When you see people with 10 bullet points on a slide and all they're
Full
doing
sentences.
is reading this. To me, they're saying, just in case you're incapable of reading this yourself, let me read it for you. Then I'll read you the next page. Be careful, one, not just to use every animation. And come on, think about it.
Yeah.
Everyone that's opened up PowerPoint or Keynote and
We've all done
figured
that.
out how to do it, you think, oh, this is cool. But then you realize, it can be a bit much. It's not about reading your slides. One of the things that we've started doing is having slides that have no text on them at all as an illustration that triggers us to know what the next point is that we're going to talk about. And if you know your subject matter really well and you're passionate about it, you don't necessarily need a script to do that.
One of the best ones, Seth Godin's Purple Cow one he did for his TED Talk. I don't think he has a piece of text on the entire thing. And it's a bunch of images. All of them are just illustrate what he's going to talk about and trigger that in his mind. And they lend weight to it. They're beautiful. I love that presentation. That's a good one, too.
Yeah. If you get to where you really know your subject matter and you're familiar with it, start removing text. Unless it's very specific information, they need to know a statistic, a number. If you could just have PowerPoints that trigger to let you know what you're going to talk about next, that's when you become one of those presenters that people really, really can become engaged in.
Right. A good book on that is called Presentation Zen. It's a really good book on doing presentations like that, of how to create really gorgeous presentations, single slides, how to lay them out, trigger those thoughts. So they become very different. They're really good.
That's Zen, as in a Zen master, right?
Yes.
Z-E-N, presentation.
Presentation Zen, Z-E-N.
That's a true illustration of less is more when it comes to that. And like I said, it'll vary whether you're doing a webinar where people may need to see some bullet points or see information. Sure. But just remember, passion over perfection. Go back to the passion over perfection. And I'd much rather see less information in a PowerPoint than for it to be overdone.
Absolutely.
For sure. Then we get to the funny people. We get to the humor, or the attempted humor sometimes. And I say the rule of thumb is no humor is better than bad humor.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are the type of person that you're not a funny person, or you don't have timing to do jokes on stage, just don't attempt it. You can get up there and you can make a joke about how unfunny you are early on and how you're just not a funny person. And you'll probably get some likes out of that, get some people that are relating to you, and will give you a little bit more slack for not being the being the funny person.
Don't feel that you have to be Chris Rock or anything when you're the funny guy. I use a lot of humor in my talks. A lot of it's self-deprecating. A lot of it has nothing to do with the presentation, but you just throw it in there to break things up, a little story, and one of the best things to do is not tell jokes. Now, this goes deep into, not a class on corporate humor. We actually have one of our clients. She teaches humor to corporate executives, but it's not about going up there and telling a structured joke. You don't want to go up there and say, knock, knock. Right. Actually, is that a joke or a riddle? I don't know. I need to learn my terms. It's more about telling humorous stories. You don't want to be a comedian. You want to be, what would you call it, a humorist, a raconteur, sure. Whatever you would call that. So when you think about humor, I've seen people that go out and buy the joke books. They go buy, well, I got the best of Henny Youngman. I'll tell some of these. And that doesn't quite work.
Right. Or the self-deprecating stuff works really well. So you can show a quick line in there that just pokes fun at you about a certain thing just a little bit, and that works great. There was one, and I was talking, and it was something about memory, and I just made a quick observation that I can't remember things my wife said to me last night, but I can still remember the entire Beastie Boys License to Ill album, like word for word from 20 plus years ago, and little things like that you get a laugh and you just move on.
Yeah, memory is always a great one. If you have problems remembering things or remembering names or anything, don't try to hide it. Go in there and make fun of that fact. I often use the one, I took this memorization course so I can memorize names from, what was his name? George Carnegie. And it immediately sets the tone, and they see that, okay, you have flaws, you're one of them, and it works out perfectly. It really comes down to each step of your presentation, each step of your webinar, to have that purpose. I say the two most important points are, one, the first point of be the educator and advocate, and the last one is have a point. Know what the outcome that you're trying to achieve from your presentation. What is it that you want your audience to do, feel, act like after they've listened to your presentation?
That's a key thing. And one thing I learned, if you're selling something, first thing you want to do is write what your close is going to be. Before you start doing everything else and putting the lesson in there, whatever else you're teaching, the meat of it, put your close in there so you know exactly what everything else has to lead up to. Because if not, you could start writing putting all this great knowledge down, and you get to your close and you realize, God, there's a whole bunch of stuff I did back there that did absolutely nothing to prepare them for this close or whatever the call to action at the end is going to be.
One of the great ways to end the close, now you want to be very purposeful and you want it to be strong, but you also want it to, especially if you're just starting doing presentations or webinars, no matter how it turns out, one way or the other, it's how you meant it to turn out. So if you're doing a live presentation and when you were speaking and there was that person there that I think you said that they made no sales.
Yeah, zero.
What was it? Painlessly obvious that it didn't work?
Early on I could tell it was not going to work.
But at the end, when they said, thank you, that's it. Was it like
nothing?
People like, what do I do now? So you want to make sure that at the end of that, your outcome can, one, if you're selling something, well, the outcome, the goal is that you want to sell something, but also have that secondary benefit of they all learned something, whether they were able to buy or not. That's the one thing I feel really strongly about when I do presentations, particularly if I am selling something. I also want to make sure that the second thing that's most important to me is that even if they don't buy, it's not the right time for them to buy, that they still got something out of the presentation, because what does that do? They remember you.
The people that bring it in for these events, they don't want you to sell stuff. They also want to be looked at that they put on a really good event. That's one of their key things. They want people to go away and say, this was a great event so-and-so put on. And you being a good speaker, even if you're not filling it full of all kinds of information, you put some things in there they can apply, you're entertaining, they remember you, like, that's what you want.
It is, because remember, being an authority isn't just about a transaction. Being an authority is having people that leave your presentation, leave your webinar, that may not have bought, that your product or your service may not have been right for them at that particular point in their life. You want them to be very, very comfortable with telling someone else that may need that. Well, I heard this guy. I heard this girl.
Oh, yeah.
Bottom line is, we talk about the benefits of authority are what? To get more leads and customers and sales.
Profits, yeah.
And profits. Being an authority can get you new customers, but it also gets your current customers to come back more often, spend more money, and tell their friends, family, and even strangers about you.
Right.
Through social media. One of the greatest things you can do is turn customers and even prospects into fans that will tell other people about you. You can't look at the only benchmark of your presentation of the bottom line, how much did I sell? This is your business. Cash flow is what your business is about. But the secondary success is that people left feeling really good about what they learned from you and have you in their mind that you are an educator and you're an advocate for their success, because that's what makes them call you the expert without you calling yourself the expert. And that's the point of adding authority to your presentations. And it's so simple to do by just going through these points. And if you have a presentation right now, go back and see if you have these ingredients in there. If not, add these ingredients. Sure. Sprinkle them in.
Yeah, and we'll have all these broken down on the website also. You can go to authorityalchemy.com and grab the document for you so you can easily have these listed out.
Well, you know what? I think that's going to lead us right now to...
Uh-oh, I hear something.
That's it.
It's finally time for authority hacks. It may be Brian's or it may be Jack's. You'll appear to be famous, then you will claim us to be the kings of authority hacks. It's done for authority hacks. It's done for authority hacks.
The authority hack. I never get tired of that song.
I love that song.
It is. It's not up for a Grammy, is it?
I should be. Or,
have we submitted it?
Yeah, I think we should.
I think we should too.
If people haven't already, I'm sure some of our listeners have already.
Is there a Grammy for short podcast bumper music? I think there should be. Even if it's not on the live show, but I think it should be. Yeah. So today's authority hack is about adding authority to your presentations. We figured the one thing that we've seen people do is we go and get those really bad free PowerPoint templates, either the ones that come with their PowerPoint, or they go and get these crazy ones that look like they're from 1999.
3D graphs and color stuff. Yeah.
It's just really, really bad. And they all have that dull colors, and I've just never seen a free template that I liked, right? So one of the things that you can do that very few people I see doing that, they go out and they try to create these crazy templates themselves or do it themselves. You can get extremely professional, done for you, already made PowerPoint keynote templates from a place called graphicriver.net.
I think so.
And if you go there, you can look, believe me, you're going to get lost at Graphic River probably for several days looking at all the cool stuff, because this can actually be an authority hack for lots of different pieces. But if you go and look under other or something like that on the far right link, you can look under there under presentations, and you can look at the presentations by PowerPoint or by Keynote. And these presentations are sometimes, $12 to $15 for these templates. But not only are they just really remarkable in their look, their color, they pop, but they also have some very well-constructed animations. Sometimes they're a little over the top, but many times they're ones that you never would have thought to put together yourself. And one thing I recommend is take a look at these, even before you start putting your information together, because I've had so many times that I got one of these presentations, and just by the templates that they have in there, have made me think of content that I could add that fits those templates. You almost work it backwards. So for $12 to $15, you're going to have probably one of the better looking presentations than most of the people that, if you're speaking at a multi-speaker event, I've seen people that have spent hundreds or even thousands of dollars to have their content put into a presentation that doesn't even look as good as some of these $12 to $15 templates. So if you are putting together a presentation, whether it's a webinar presentation or whether it's a presentation for a live event, check out graphicriver.net and look at the presentation templates. You are going to come away from there probably with a better presentation than you ever could have imagined putting together yourself.
Yeah, these would be great for putting out ebooks.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've used these for the basis of videos presentations, short promotional videos. Yeah, you're right. Ebooks, convert them into a PDF for ebook information. Like I said, they're going to look way better than you could have even imagined of putting those together yourself. Just be careful not to spend as many hours as I do when I discover these things in there.
I was looking. They have a whole bunch of fonts in here. Also, just gorgeous fonts for like $5 and $6. And man, I said, I'm gonna start spending some money at this place.
It's dangerous. So that is the authority hack, to be able to not just add that authority to your presentations, but also have it look like you spent quite a bit of money to have your content put into those. So that's adding authority to your presentations that we have today. Authority Alchemy. Brian, I'm going to leave you with the last word here.
Sure. And today's lessons from Jackson. Being genuine draws good people to you. Jackson is Jackson all the time, no matter where we are, who he's with, or what's going on. He sits in the shopping cart and blows kisses to everyone and anyone that will look at him. If there's a song that he likes, he dances. At home, in the car, or standing up in his seat at a restaurant. And he authentically draws positive attention and love everywhere we go. I can't even count the times that someone has said his blowing a kiss turned their mood around and made their day. Lessons learned from business. So many of us put different masks on so that we'll be liked and respected by others. For example, many people try and prove their success by buying flashy watches or cars or putting on a false persona of success. Or when we're talking to other people in your industry, you may be scared to open up and admit a painful failure. It's natural to try and fit in with others because as humans, we have a deep-seated need to be accepted by others around us. And we think the mask is needed to remain accepted. But you'll be surprised how much more accepted and loved you'll be once you become your genuine self. And I know it's scary to open up and bare your soul, but you will start to attract good people to you. I know this because when I dropped the check me out a rich persona and let myself be the dorky, doting dad from Texas, the quality of my clients increased dramatically. My relationship with them was amazing, and my business made a lot more money just by being myself.
Authority Alchemy.
The show for positioning yourself as the #1 authority in your industry.
Quickly turn your prospects into clients and clients into raving fans.
Authority Alchemy.
Authority Alchemy.
The editing and production of this podcast were provided by Authority Engine. Learn more at authorityengine.com.